So we return by a roundabout way to the conclusions worked out in the first chapter of this book. Our perception, we said, is originally in things rather than in mind. In the mind, without us rather than within. The several kinds of perception correspond to so many directions actually marked out in reality, but we added, this perception which coincides with its object exists rather in theory than in fact. It could only happen if we were shut up within the present moment. In concrete perception, memory intervenes, and the subjectivity of sensible qualities is due precisely to the fact that our consciousness, which begins by being only memory, prolongs a plurality of moments into each other, contracting them into a single intuition. Consciousness and matter, body and soul, were thus seen to meet each other in perception. But in one aspect, this idea remained for us obscure, because our perception, and consequently also our consciousness, seemed thus to share in the divisibility which is attributed to matter. If, on the dualistic hypothesis, we naturally shrunk from accepting the partial coincidence of the perceived object and the perceiving subject, it is because we are conscious of the undivided unity of our perception, whereas the object appears to us to be, in essence, infinitely divisible. Hence the hypothesis of a consciousness with inextensive sensations placed over against an extended multiplicity. But if our divisibility of matter is entirely relative to our action thereon, that is to say, to our faculty of modifying its aspect, if it belongs not to matter itself, but to the space which we throw beneath this matter in order to bring it within our grasp, then the difficulty disappears. Extended matter, regarded as a whole, is like a consciousness where everything balances and compensates and neutralizes everything else. It possesses in very truth the indivisibility of our perception, so that inversely we may without scruple attribute to perception something of the extensity of matter. These two terms, perception and matter, approach each other in the measure that we divest ourselves of what may be called the prejudices of action. Sensation recovers extensity. The concrete extended recovers its natural continuity and indivisibility. And homogeneous space, which stood between the two terms like an insurmountable barrier, is then seen to have no other reality than that of a diagram or a symbol. It interests the behavior of a being which acts upon matter, but not the work of a mind which speculates on its existence. Thereby also some light may be thrown upon the problem towards which all our enquiries converge, that of the union of the body and soul. The obscurity of this problem on the dualistic hypothesis comes from the double fact that matter is considered as essentially divisible, and every state of the soul as rigorously inextensive, so that from the outset the communication between the two terms is severed. And when we go more deeply into this double postulate, we discover in regard to matter a confusion of concrete and indivisible extensity with the divisible space which underlies it, and also in regard to mind, the illusory idea that there are no degrees, no possible transition between the extended and the unextended. But if these two postulates involve a common error, if there is a gradual passage from the idea to the image and from the image to the sensation, if, in the measure in which it evolves towards actuality, that is, say, towards action, the mental state draws nearer to extension, if, finally, this extension once attained remains undivided and therefore is not out of harmony with the unity of the soul, we can understand that spirit can rest upon matter and consequently unite with it in the act of pure perception, yet nevertheless be radically distinct from it. It is distinct from matter, that it is, even then, memory. That is to say, a synthesis of past and present with a view to the future, in that it contracts the moments of this matter in order to use them and to manifest itself by actions which are the final aim of its union with the body. We were right, then, when we said at the beginning of this book that the distinction between body and mind must establish in terms not of space, but of time.